Welcome to Norse Code, the number one podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I'm your host and producer. My name is James Pagoshnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And at the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from Pro Football Network. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, was the Mariota almost interception one of the worst quarterback plays of the year, or one of the worst quarterback plays you've ever seen?
I am so upset for that whole play. How do you not hold on to that ball? Right? It was at that point you are the intended receiver, right? Like you can't. That's it.
There's a difference between like an arm punt and whatever that was. I like
that was like a gift cradled from the gods, nestled upon a cloud that floated down to the defensive back, who said, "Nay, I will work for my interceptions."
And the fact that he was saved literally by his rear end hitting the ground is the only reason why that wasn't returned as a pick six, or why it didn't count anyway as a pick six. Like that's
incredible
talent. Justice Mosqueda tweeted out that he apologizes for ever advocating for Marcus Mariota in 2022. Like this got more retractions than the election. It was fantastic. Well, welcome to this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys are all doing well. We have a game to preview. We have an interview with famed Bills historian, Twitter icon, Victoria. She'll be on in just a little bit to talk about the Bills game with Arif. And we have a mailbag as well. But before we start, once again, thank you guys so much for listening to Norse Code. We have a live show happening in 1 week, November 17th at Union 32 Craft House. We'll be there about 7:30 or so. We've got to have people out there. There's going to be drinks. There's going to be food. There'll be the greatest framed jersey you will ever set your eyes upon. Finally leaving my home and making the trip down to Minneapolis toward its forever home. Thank God. But
it's making the trip down to Minneapolis, but it's not leaving your home.
Oh well. I've had the whole like Hotel California thing pointed out to me before. Like, I'm aware of the situation. This just better not be bequeathed to me in a will somewhere. I'm going to be very, very upset. But
yeah, now that you said it aloud, I can't imagine how this would happen.
Yeah, the Treadwell jersey will be there. Also, I have a special gift I will be giving out to someone in the audience that I was amazed I was able to find on eBay for the price I did. Also, we're giving away 2 tickets to the Cowboys game, which is happening on Sunday afternoon. So, if you want to see the show, if you'd like to get tickets, if you'd like to hang out with us for the evening, go ahead and head over to Union 32 Craft House in Eagan, Minnesota. About 7:30 is when we will be starting. So check us out there. If you'd like to financially support the show, you can do so in a couple of different ways. You can go over to patreon.com/NorseCode and donate there. For $3.50 a month, you get access to things like the bonus material. You get access to the Discord and all of that. So check it out over at patreon.com/NorseCode. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode as well if you'd like to make a one-time donation. Or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and get all of your holiday wreath outfits. Get your sweaters, get your holiday socks. The holiday socks time is back. It's now time for you to get some of those wreath socks. And get a shower curtain too. Because why not?
I mean, why not?
What could say happy holidays more than you don't even have to put it in the shower. You can put it anywhere.
You can just hang it up.
Yeah, you can hang it up
in your home, like on a wall or dividing a room, right? Maybe you get like a home office situation going on.
Or maybe you have one of those like I Love Lucy situations where you need to cut a room in half. And instead of putting chalk on the floor, you're going to hang up a series.
The side that the face is on, that's your side.
Yes, exactly. We're bringing it back to James's relationship corner again, which we don't spend nearly enough time in. So this is a wonderful solution to an everyday problem, quite frankly. So yeah, let's go with that. But head over to norsecode.threadless.com for all of your Norse Code merchandise needs for this holiday season. Now, let's get into the show. Arif, wow, I actually did say Arif. I'm not even cutting that. That's great.
Incredible. So natural, too.
I know, right? You should be honored or disturbed. I'll be
if you were a substitute teacher, I'd be upset, but you're not, so I'm good.
Yeah, it's not like I get paid to announce names or anything for a living, so as I've been doing that for this year. All right, so without any further ado, let's get into the show. Arif went out to went online.
Congrats on knowing my name.
I know we've only been doing this show for 9 years, and I've only known you
me for longer.
I've only known you since you were like 5. So, jeez. I hope you guys are still sticking around because we're trying to get to this interview with that Arif did with Victoria earlier today to preview the game with the Bills. So we'll go to the interview that Arif conducted earlier today.
All right, I'm here with ball knower, Vikings insider, and co-host on currently on hiatus podcast, but when it's not on hiatus, it's real good. The Tuck Rule Pod. Victoria, also known as Dirtbag Queer on Twitter and apparently on Reddit, Violent Queer. How's that sit with you?
Oh my god, yeah. Jeez. I would say,
jeez.
Yeah. Ball knower, football Twitter participant, Vikings Twitter villain, Vikings
antagonist.
Twitter
I think.
Rasputin.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Okay, we were on the same wavelength there. Yeah, a Rasputin of Vikings Twitter.
Yeah. I am allegedly somewhat responsible for the Sam Howell thing last year.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. Also, that wasn't last year. That was like 7 months ago.
That was 7 months ago. Yeah.
It feels like it was forever ago. Feels like it was forever ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's some weeks or a decade, right?
Yeah.
But also, I didn't even mention this. Football Twitter's premier special teams expert, right? Specialist
against
expert, I should say.
Yeah. I've kind of fallen backwards into that where I have punting opinions. And
strong punting opinions.
Yeah, and I'm always right. Like, I was completely right about Ryan Stonehouse, who's already a top 5 punter, Yeah. So, I'm around on football Twitter these days, I guess. Like, for now, anyway.
To the extent that there is a football Twitter as we record. We'll see tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, football Twitter under FTC investigation at the moment.
God. Oh, no.
Ostensibly, we're here to talk about the Bills. Not a ton of information to be gleaned, unfortunately, about the Bills as their most important player. Has some sort of... Well, I guess they have said that it's a UCL injury. Can you tell me about, like, what the weirdness about all this?
Okay. I'm trying to think about what is public knowledge right now. I believe that the official team line...
Ooh.
I know. I believe that the official team line right now is that Josh Allen sprained, partially tore his UCL, which is a very important ligament in his throwing elbow. Allegedly, this happened right at the end of the game last week on, I believe, Bryce Hall dumped him for a strip sack with like less than 2 minutes to go. And then he responded by uncorking a like 70-yard pass on 4th and 21, just because that's how Josh Allen is.
Right. Yeah. Very like emotional shot energy from Aaron Rodgers, but not in response to a setback.
Yeah.
Like in the same way.
So Bill's Twitter, of which I am a involuntary member, I would say, has been losing its mind about the Josh Allen stuff just because the Bills have kept the cards very close to their chest. As of right now, Josh Allen is allegedly week to week with this injury. He very much wants to play through it. This is pretty similar to an injury that forced him to miss like 3-4 games when he was a rookie, I believe.
Mm-hmm. So well, that's a concern then, right? If it's the same injury.
Yeah. It's so right away there was some concern that if it was a total tear that he might need Tommy John. This will be a concern going forward because he's injured this thing before. So I would say it is likely but not certain that Case Keenum will end up starting this game.
Right. Oh my gosh. Dog particles at extremely high parts per million at the moment.
God. Yeah.
All right. Well, okay.
I just he officially did not practice today.
Mhm.
I
Saw that.
don't know. I don't know if it's going to be announced that he isn't playing today, tomorrow, or if they're going to like try and keep it secret all the way up until Sunday. But I don't expect him to. Like, there's no way he can.
Fair enough. Yeah. All right. So before we talk about like the players specifically, offense, defense, two things. One is the unparalleled vibes of the team, which of course with the Josh Allen injury have been probably implicated, but the whole season, this team's vibes have been astronomical. Reminds me of the 2017 Eagles vibes.
Yeah. I think it's tough because I think the national audience sees them like just beat the breaks off the Rams and the Titans, and they played that close game with the Chiefs. I would say the Bills have had this neat trick the last 2 seasons, even where they play all of their fun games on primetime where everyone sees. And then whenever they play at 1:00, and I know that we're playing the Vikings this week and Kirk Cousins is like salivating hearing me say this, but like they tend to they really tend to lay their eggs in these like sleepy Sunday 1 p.m. like slots. They've been really good.
The noon 1 p.m. slot. Oh, that's Vikings primetime hours, baby.
I know. So yeah, that is a bad combo. It is hard to not sound spoiled when, as a Bills fan, I am complaining about the 6-2 football team that has like a plus 100 point differential at this point.
A little bit different than the 7-1 football team with like a plus 2 point differential, whatever it is right now.
Yeah, like they've left so many points on the board. It has been frustrating the past couple of weeks against the Packers and especially against the Jets to see this team just like leave a lot out on the field, especially in the passing game where outside of Diggs, they don't seem to have anything, which is not a problem they've had in years. But yeah, it seems like they have Diggs and that's the only guy they trust.
So their red zone percentage is bottom half of the league right now. It's at 53.6%. They also have entered the red zone at a pretty decent rate, not like an enormous rate, and it seems like it's primarily a big play offense when it scores.
Yeah, and that is I would say that is something that's different about this year's team compared to what in my head I sort of mentally block off as the Cole Beasley era of this Bills offense, where and obviously Cole Beasley,
God, Cole Beasley. That's the thing that everyone thinks about right now in the current climate when they think about Cole Beasley.
We obviously do not have to hand it to him, but I think the Bills absolutely do miss having someone that they trust underneath, because right now, if you look at receiving yards on this team, you have Stephon Diggs with 870 or with 857 and 7 touchdowns. Big step down to Gabe Davis with 451 yards, and that's 25 yards per reception. He's been very unreliable this year. Like he's dropped a lot of passes. He has not he hasn't really stepped up in the way that you would hope. But then the next guys we got Devin Singletary with 207 receiving yards. Step down to Dawson Knox and Isaiah McKenzie. Like this offense kind of goes through Diggs and that's it, which is different and weird. It's like it isn't a very diverse offense, and I think that they're definitely like thinner at their skill positions than they have been in quite a while. Which is not a great position to be in without Josh Allen, hypothetically.
Sure. Well, actually, that provides us a good opportunity to talk about the receivers just a little bit more in depth, right? Because there's been a lot of excitement about Gabe Davis. His, moments on the field in 2020 as a rookie, I think, were pretty exciting. Last year turned out to be pretty decent. And then this year, in big games and primetime games, he's shown up kind of in bigger moments. And so it feels like, hey, you've got something in Gabe Davis here, pretty good 4th-round pick. Obviously, everyone's familiar with Stephon Diggs, especially here in Minnesota. And then Isaiah McKenzie, it feels like it's doing all right. And then the last couple of games, I've heard Khalil Shakir's name called, not just on special teams, but on offense. And so I think the public perception of this team, and of course there's Aaron Rodgers' favorite, Jake Kumaro. The public perception is that this team has a pretty good receiver group, that it is maybe not as deep as it was last year, of course, but that, this is a really solid group to work with. And the understanding I'm getting from you is that, maybe that's not quite the case, or if it is the case, they don't really know how to use it.
I think it's a little of both. I think with Davis, I think people were pretty surprised after his rookie season that the Bills went out and got Emmanuel Sanders.
I was, yeah.
And I think it's because, like, if you really watch Gabe, he doesn't have that developed of a route tree yet, which is concerning because it's year 3. And he isn't DK Metcalf. He isn't someone who can make up for a limited route tree just by being like a crazy athlete. Like, he's a good athlete, and he's really good on deep balls. The Allen to Diggs post, or the Allen to Davis post, is like the best play in football, but they can't hit that every play.
Right.
So, like, he does have 451 receiving yards, but he has a 98-yard touchdown and a 60-yard touchdown in the same game against the Steelers secondary. He just has not been that reliable down to down. He has like a weird amount of drops. He doesn't play very physically. Like, I think Diggs is a much better contested catch wide receiver, and he's always been good at that. But, like, Davis is much bigger. It definitely feels like he hasn't really, like, stepped up the way that you'd want a wide receiver to. Like, I could understand why, if you're just watching highlights or if he's on your fantasy team, you could be like, oh man, this guy's awesome. But he doesn't look like right now like he's like a super steady wide receiver 1, like maybe I sort of thought he might be.
Right.
And McKenzie has been similarly not very reliable out of the slot. It's pretty clear to me that he's a gadget player, which is tough because the Bills did this thing where they lost their wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3 coming out of last year. And rather than go out and sign anyone, they just kind of bumped their guys lower up. And everyone was like, well, yeah, that'll probably work because they were crazy deep. And it's pretty clear that they're missing Jamison Crowder, who's still injured. I think if they had Crowder right now, the offense would have a lot more. I think the offense would have more of a counterpunch when they can't get Diggs going. And also, this is strange. They can't seem to get Dawson Knox involved, which is weird. It doesn't seem like they're trying very hard because he's been okay when they've thrown him the ball. They just haven't done it.
Right. Okay. So it is worth kind of talking about that tight end group. It feels like the tight end group is, I'm not going to say an afterthought. They've obviously kind of, they drafted Dawson Knox in the 3rd round. They drafted Tommy Sweeney in the same year. But it feels like the tight end group is just like not a big factor in the way that offensive design works for this team.
Going into training camp, I think the general vibe, just from the moves they made in the offseason, was that they were going to go a little beefier in terms of having multiple tight ends on the field more because they signed OJ Howard. And also they have a pretty good young fullback, Reggie Gilliam, and they signed Roger Saffold, who at this point in his career is more of a run blocking guard than he is anything else. And sort of the thought that I had, and the thought that a lot of people had, was that the Bills were going to sort of put 2 tight ends on the field more, work out a play action, get their fullback on the field, and kind of like mash with counter. And like they have been able to run counter pretty well this year. But they haven't put 2 tight ends on the field. OJ Howard got cut in training camp. And their fullback their fullback was on the field quite a bit in weeks 1 and 2, I believe. And he's kind of seen his snaps go down since. So they've kind of just gone back to being this wide open Dable thing. But they don't have the wide receivers to like go 3 and 4 wide. Like if you're doing that, then Jake Kumerow is probably on the field, and you don't want Jake Kumerow on the field. I don't know why they aren't working in Khalil Shakir more, but that is, I don't know. The Bills can be really stubborn working in rookies basically ever since McDermott got the job. But the tight end group is Quentin Morris seems like an interesting player, but they aren't in a hurry to get him out there in 2 tight end sense. Tommy Morris is a blocking tight end. And it feels like Knox's role in the offense has decreased, which is curious because they just gave him a big contract.
Right. And deservedly so. He's played pretty well.
Yeah. Dawson Knox was really good last year. I really thought that he like permanently took a step into the next like tight end echelon because he's a really good blocker and he is a great athlete. He's big. He basically does everything you'd want him to do on paper, but they've just struggled to get in the ball this year. And Dawson Knox is going through a lot right now. Dawson Knox's like brother died in August, I believe. So and obviously that's horrible. Who knows what's going on with him? I wish him all the best. It just is not working right now, I would say.
And then kind of the running back story has been kind of interesting, right? Because they drafted James Cook, a decision I recall that you were not the biggest fan of because it was in the second round. Yeah. And then I guess that wasn't good enough, right? Because they traded for Nyheim Hines. And also Devin Singletary is on the roster. So what is this? What is this running back group about?
I don't know if the Bills know.
Is there an about? Yeah.
Yeah. The Bills have taken, pardon me for this metaphor, but they've taken sort of a Soviet World War II approach to their backfield where it really isn't about quality. It is more about just like, we need more guys. We need more dudes. So they've spent 2 third-round picks in the last 4 years on running backs, and they just spent a second-round pick. They've already traded one of those third-round picks away to get Nyheim Hines. And it seems like they've spent all this like capital and effort trying to find a running back, and Devin Singletary is still the only competent one. But James Cook has been seeing the ball more recently. He looked really rough starting the season. It doesn't help that his first touch was a fumble. But he definitely showed a little bit more. He definitely showed a little bit more against the Jets in the most recent week, showing a little bit more burst, showing a little bit more decisiveness. I still don't love James Cook as a player. I think he's kind of like a one-trick pony at this point. Like, I don't love his decisiveness between the tackles. But I think there's a chance that he grows. And at this point, I don't know if the Bills have a plan to get Nyheim Hines involved in the offense because they didn't last week. He got like 1 target. He might have only had a few snaps on offense.
I mean, he'd just gotten the playbook though, right?
True.
Like, I feel like that's a little different.
I mean, true, but also I know this because TJ Hawkinson's on my fantasy team. I know that
Hawkinson was like the only traded player to perform week 1 after the trade deadline. Every other traded player was like Garbo.
True, but I just I don't think it would have been hard for them to give him a few more looks.
It's true, and also like what running back needs a playbook to run duo, right?
Yeah, like there's that, and also like I think the Bills kind of got him to maybe sort of get Isaiah McKenzie off the field in a couple sets where he would otherwise be on the field because the Bills like to line him up in the backfield sometimes. They like to get the ball to him on jet sweeps. I think that those are situations where Hines can get on the field and give them an excuse to get McKenzie off of it.
Just real quick, just as a reminder to everybody, the Bills are 3rd in points scored per game. I know it doesn't sound like this right now.
I know. This is like... Being a Bills fan, like, I don't know, like, it is so frustrating because they are as good as they are, but like watching it, it's just constantly extremely frustrating because like they leave so many points on the field and they still score as much as they do. But like Josh Allen has thrown
4th in scoring percentage per drive, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I want the listeners to like understand like what the context of these criticisms are.
Yes. I don't know. They have this weird thing where they turn over the ball at the most
it's number 1 in the league. Turnover percentage per drive, number 1 in the league.
Yeah, so that is definitely a lot of it. I definitely am being overly critical of a team that's still pretty good, but
you are talking to the master of that right now. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. I was about to say the Vikings are 7-1, and I still don't think Vikings fans think their team is good.
And they're right.
Yeah, but the NFC isn't good, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, right. Who cares? Right. Okay, just win games. Well, this I think kind of naturally before we circle all the way back to Case Keenum. There's so many like Vikings narratives in this game, right? Because Zach Davidson's on the practice squad. I know that's the biggest Vikings narrative that everyone's going to be talking about. But there is a player named Stephon Diggs that has some history with the Vikings.
First I've heard of it.
Yeah, well, I mean it's brief cup of coffee. James Cook is the brother of Dalvin Cook.
That's going to be. The TV broadcast is going.
Oh, they're going to love that. Oh my, they even look alike too, right? It's just like, so I mean, Dalvin Cook is both a better pass catcher and a running back, which is wild given that James Cook's job is only to catch passes. But
yep,
it's just for I guess a deeper dive later. But that's kind of the scenario. But yeah, there's a lot of these kind of Vikings connections. Then we'll get to Case Keenum in a second, which is obviously. Kind of one of the more, feel good, exciting connections. But I do want to talk about this offensive line a bit because, I take a look at, the pass protection numbers, the pressure numbers, the pass block win rate, and it's like fine. It's not bad. It's not great. It's like fine, but I just kind of get the sense watching the Bills or interacting with Bills Twitter that it feels like a problem.
Yeah, I think it is broadly fine. I think they probably thought they were getting more when they signed Roger Saffold. I don't know how realistic that was. I thought he would at least be better. I thought he would at least be a force multiplier in the running game. He has not been. This is Brian Bates's first full year starting at guard. He's been okay. Spencer Brown's hurt right now, so they have David Quessenberry filling in at right tackle. I think that's been like a net good for them.
Oh wow. Okay.
I mean, obviously, we hope that Spencer Brown recovers and all that, but he has been tough this year. Yeah, I would say their offensive line it does enough to be league average, maybe just slightly above, because Mitch Morse is still a really good center to have.
Right, yeah.
Mitch Morse loves to absolutely wreck dudes on counter. There are few centers that really love getting out in space like Mitch Morse does. And Deion Dawkins will have one or two like just inexplicably bad games a year. And usually those are against Melvin Ingram. That guy loves to get cooked by Melvin Ingram.
What a strange weakness to have.
Yeah, it is debilitating. I kind of think that the Dolphins signed Melvin Ingram just because they were like, wow.
That's funny.
But it happens every time. It is very bizarre. But still, I would say, yeah, their line is fine. It does enough. Usually the Jets kind of ate them alive. But the Jets defense is really good.
Yeah. One of the deepest pass rush units in the league. Apparently.
Allegedly. Nobody's actually watched a single Jets game.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I guess the like top 10 pick edge rusher is like not an element of that really good pass rush. So it's just a fascinating unit all around.
Yeah.
All right, but let's talk about this quarterback situation. So we're pretty confident that Josh Allen is unlikely to play. So you've got Vikings savior Case Keenum, who everybody loves. The locker room loves him. Generally speaking, every locker room I've heard him be in, I guess I don't know about the Bills, seems to love Case Keenum a lot. He plays with a lot of moxie and a lot of guts. And I don't know if accuracy or arm strength is really a part of that scouting report, but he very much likes to take chances, and these are checks he's not always cashing. but he's fun. He's fun. It's a fun quarterback playing style. What is your read on Case Keenum?
He has only been a Bill for a short period of time, but I would say that my read on him from the preseason, he had one pretty good preseason game, but like outside of that, and in the limited opportunities he's had with like the first team offense, fun would not be the first word that I would use. I would just like, I do not think the Bills fit his skill set at this point whatsoever. Like, I'm pretty sure that this
Stephon Diggs right there. What are you talking about? Instant chemistry.
That's it. Like, there is no Jamison Crowder. There is nobody bailing this dude out outside of Devin Singletary / James Cook. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that if Case Keenum has to start, let's say, 4 to 6 games for the Buffalo Bills,
to throw a random range out there.
Yeah. I'm not a reporter. Let's say hypothetically 4 to 6 games. I don't think that would be a good thing for the Bills' playoff seeding. I think it would probably go pretty disastrously. Right. But
it's not like the AFC East has any teams that have been able to win games. So
the AFC East is what people thought the AFC West would be. Unironically believe that all of those teams are capable of doing literally anything any week.
Yeah, any one of those teams can just wreck someone just out of nowhere. Like, oh, okay, well, Patriots shut us out somehow. I guess that's today.
Yeah, and like at least when the Bills and Dolphins do it to you, it's like, well, Josh Allen / Tyreek Hill / Jalen Waddle, just like took over.
Yeah, I get it, right?
But like when the Jets,
all right, so
and Patriots do that to you, brutal.
The Bills are in dire seeding straits, I suppose, as it were, with the Case Keenum situation.
Yeah.
They'll make the playoffs. They'll make some noise. You just got to win that first round, right?
Yeah.
Then it's the same.
Yeah. The Bills do have tiebreakers in playoff seeding over the Chiefs and Titans, so they have that going for them. That's
true.
Least.
That's true. Yeah.
And if they're going to lose any of these games, NFC games are the ones to lose.
Yep.
I will be watching this week's spread with great interest.
Yeah, currently, at least when I checked this morning, it was -3.5 Bills. Before the Josh Allen news was public, I believe it was -7.5, which I thought was pretty generous to the Vikings. But yeah, I think that there's still an air of uncertainty in the line. And so I think that the line will move as we get the injury report in later today. We're recording early Thursday. So that, I think, brings us to the defense, which has a fair number of injuries on it. Let's take a quick look at the injury reports.
The injury report dropped, I believe, like 30 minutes ago.
Oh, perfect. Let me just press refresh.
So
here we go. Josh Allen did not practice.
Yeah. Pretty tough. It looks like a lot of the guys who looked limited are going to be good to go. Like, I'm pretty sure the Bills are finally going to get Tre'Davious White back on the field this week. That'll be pretty huge.
That is huge.
Yeah. It looks like Greg Rousseau isn't going to be playing, which is pretty tough for them. Greg Rousseau is awesome in the run defense game specifically, even though he's definitely becoming a more like well-rounded player. And the Bills do have a lot of depth at the defensive end position, so like they should still be okay. Like the Bills are in a position where their 5th defensive end off the bench is Shaq Lawson, who gives you like honestly a fairly comparable skill set. So that's not that bad. So that isn't that big of a deal. The number one most important player on the Bills defense, with Micah Hyde injured, who is the most important player when he's healthy, Jordan Poyer looks like he probably won't play again.
Yeah. So who are the safeties? Because it felt like, obviously they took a step back when Micah Hyde was, but not as big of a step back when, what was it, Damar Hamlin came in for him?
Yeah. So kind of, this has been maybe the thing that's surprised me the most this season. So the Bills' third safety coming into the season, who would fill in if either Hyde or Poyer ever got injured, was thought to be Jaquan Johnson, who is this like former 6th round pick out of Miami, who's been in the building for like 4 years now. The Bills absolutely have like loved this dude. They've been developing him for years, and then he's been awful when he's played this year. But they've gotten pretty decent play out of DeMar Hamlin, who was last year's 6th-round pick out of Pitt. He is very much a run support safety at this point in his career. The Bills have gotten very creative sending him on blitzes. When he has an open tackle, it is a thing of beauty to watch him just teleport right on top of the dude and just blow him up. He's very much that kind of safety. So that is effective when he has Jordan Poyer cleaning up behind him.
Right.
When he has Jaquan Johnson cleaning up behind him, not so good.
Right.
Yeah, so they're going to be rolling out Johnson and Hamlin most likely. They did trade for a fella by the name of Dean Marlowe, who spent
he just feels like a depth guy, right? That doesn't seem like somebody you'd have starting.
At this point, with their top 2 safeties out, he's probably
yeah, that's true.
He's probably a better piece for them than Johnson. I think they're probably going to be stubborn and stick with Johnson. But yeah, so their safety room is looking rough right now. That is definitely the biggest hole. I will say they'll probably at this point, just looking at the injury report, I would imagine that they'd miss Tremaine Edmonds and Kyer Elam as well, but maybe not. No Elam.
Yeah. Okay. So the Kyer Elam thing is really interesting, right? Because Christian Benford started over him.
Yeah. So the fascinating thing with that is that they've been rotating Benford and Elam all season when they've both been healthy. So Dane Jackson,
just in the preseason, right? That was they were doing that
regular season too. Yeah.
Well, no, I said they were also doing that in the preseason as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So there will be drives when Elam's out there. There will be drives when Benford's out there. It's weird because Benford's has been pretty significantly outplayed by Elam at this point.
He has. Okay.
Yeah. I don't really know what I think sometimes the Bills are a little stubborn and have a little too much faith in their day 3 guys to the point where they suffer for it. Christian Benford's very far along for a 6th-round pick, rookie out of Villanova. But Kyer Elam's big and he's very physical and he does make mistakes at this point. Mostly sort of a sticky press man corner at this point in his career. So he does make mistakes. In the Steelers game, George Pickens absolutely devoured him. But I think he's pretty clearly someone that they should be starting when he's healthy. I would expect to see Dane Jackson though start across from Tre'Davious White, especially if Elam's not healthy. But even if Elam is healthy, I think he probably won't start over Jackson. Which is kind of wild that they spent first round. Yeah, that they spent a 1st-round pick on this dude, and Dane Jackson, who's a 7th rounder from Pitt, is beating him out.
It is a really deep cornerback group, right? Because you've also got Teron Johnson and Saron Neal, right?
Yep. And they have this dude, Cameron Lewis, who plays everywhere in the secondary. And there's one thing the Bills can usually do, and I say usually because it hasn't happened with Jaquan Johnson, but they can usually make everyone in the secondary look presentable. And part of that's just because both Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier have that secondary coach background. That's both those guys are wizards in that particular position group. So they get the most out of what they have in the secondary pretty consistently.
All right. That was fantastic to get a look into. Linebacker group also kind of, I don't know, Matt Milano actually participated in practice, so probably not a worry there. Fantastic linebacker. What is up? So we're not going to get Tremaine Edmonds, who is good now, right? That's...
He's been better. He's been better this year. If you
he's
know
only
me on
19.
Twitter,
You got to give him.
Yeah. If you know me on Twitter, you know that I have had a long-standing, friendly grudge against Tremaine Edmonds. He has been fine this year. I will say a lot of that is probably because their defensive tackle room is a lot better. And anyone can look pretty good playing next to Matt Milano, usually. But yeah, apparently he has a groin and a heel injury. Those are both new, I believe. So if you see Edmonds miss time, my guess is that they would replace him with Terrell Dotson, but they might play Terrell Bernard instead, who's the rookie third rounder out of Baylor. In which case, I don't think you would notice much of a difference at all.
Oh boy, okay.
I don't like Matt Milano is such a dominant will linebacker that like as long as the Mike is like competent and knows what he's doing, the Bills are pretty okay in the linebacker department, I would say.
Okay, and it looks like he'll be playing. So, what makes Matt Milano like as good as he is?
It is a lot of little things. He's very good in coverage, unless he's covering Travis Kelce, which I think is most really good linebackers. Like,
That's fair.
yeah, very good in coverage. He also he just very smart if you watch him. I think he is usually the first person to the football on run plays. Again, even though he's the will linebacker, he plays with a lot more physicality than Edmonds usually does from the mic. Even though he's a little like undersized, he is a very violent linebacker. Yeah, I would say that he definitely does a little bit of everything. Coverage though is, I would say, the thing that he's definitely like most above the mean at.
Cool. So obviously kind of supplementing that group is that defensive line. We talked a tiny bit about Greg Rousseau because he was on the injury report, but obviously Von Miller, who I guess technically is on the injury report, sounds like it was a vet rest day, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But you've got Von Miller, famously, right? It's just somebody that we knew that the Bills went after, right? But we've gotten some pretty interesting. Yeah, we've gotten some pretty interesting stuff from AJ Epinesa over the past couple of years. Not like amazing stuff, but interesting, right? And you've got Boogie Basham. So that group, they've been able to generate a bunch of pass rush on the outside, but also the inside has been.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Ed Oliver has been fun to watch, right? They've got like a great. It feels like every defensive tackle is like a nose tackle, basically.
Yeah.
But
their defensive line, it has always been a thing with these Sean McDermott defenses, but they rotate these guys like crazy.
Yeah.
It is rare to see one of these guys get more than 65% of the snaps in any given game. So you're going to see like 9 different guys take defensive line snaps for the Bills. The defensive tackle room, I think especially, has been kind of the most surprising thing. So obviously, Ed Oliver's been there for a few years now. But in the offseason, they bring in Tim Settle, who's been okay. He's been fine. I think he's missed a couple games. But Daquan Jones has been a massive signing for them in sort of a like unheralded way. He slotted into the Harrison Phillips like role that he vacated so he could go play for your franchise. And he has been better than Harrison Phillips was, like straight up in pretty much every way. Harrison Phillips was kind of inconsistent in Buffalo. He definitely put it together last year. Last year was his best season with the Bills easily. But Jones has been like a force up the middle. And then also they brought in Jordan Phillips, who is a 340-pound defensive tackle who they line up on the edge sometimes.
Why not?
He has a freak skill set, and it only works in Buffalo. He signed a big contract with the Cardinals and just was nothing there. But then after that flops, he signs back with the Bills, and he's been a terror again. Daquan Jones is definitely leading the charge in the run defense. But on third down, they get Phillips on the field. Then they'll usually put Oliver or a third defensive end next to him in the middle. And they really get after guys on third down.
It feels like the story of the Bills pass rush over the past 2 years has like dramatically shifted, right? Because like 2 years ago, they didn't really have much of a pass rush. They start drafting,
Yeah.
these first and second rounders. They end up having to basically rely on AJ Klein blitzing a lot to get any pass rush.
Ugh. God.
Sorry. I didn't know that was such a big issue. And then, but now they got a front four. I feel like they blitzed like the least in the NFL, maybe.
Yeah. They've been blitzing a little bit more without.
No, hold on. Let's talk about this AJ Klein thing. This sounds like a story. What's such a visceral reaction? Well,
it's partially because he shows up to Buffalo in the 1 year where the Bills defense randomly sucked. Part of it is likely that there was no fans in the stands for home games. Mm-hmm. So like that is a big deal for the Bills when they're at home. Like it kind of can't be overstated. Either way, defense was not good when he showed up. He had to play a lot of linebacker in 2020 because Matt Milano was injured. Mm-hmm. So, and AJ Klein is not Matt Milano. I hate to break it to you, but he was like the Bills would send him on these blitzes where he was just completely not blocked, and he would end up with he ended up having these very fluky 2-sack games, and Bills fans would be like, "Oh my God, this guy should be a Pro Bowler." And it's like,
yeah, I remember that.
God, anyone can get a sack. Like anyone can get a sack if they aren't blocked. It turns out. Anyway, I did not.
I've seen Anthony Barr play. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Anyway, it is significantly better now. They certainly do have a lot of second round picks in that defensive line room that could have been better spent elsewhere. But Boogie Basham, when he gets his 15 snaps a game, sometimes he does something cool.
Yeah, why not? All right, cool. That was a pretty exhaustive look through the Bills' offense and defense. But you're a special teamer, right? This is. Wait, well, hold on. Actually, this is, if you're comfortable talking about it, the reason that you know so much about special teams. Well, why don't you just tell us?
God, I'm writing a book about a kicker. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So which is not done. I don't have anywhere I can send you to buy anything, but. Anyway,
when it is done, we're promoting the heck out of it.
Hell yeah. So writing a novel about special teams. So I taught myself how to evaluate special teams so I could write it accurately. And now I'm burdened with punter analysis knowledge.
But it's about a kicker, right?
Yes.
Why did you have to learn about punters?
Well, I figured, in for a penny, in for a pound. Might as well just go in all the way. Yeah. Well, also the Bills really needed a punter when I was doing all this. So I was like, well, I might as well.
You must have been happy when they drafted one. Sorry, this is a real touchy one.
Yeah. The Bills drafted a bad punter who turned out to be a bad person. When they could have drafted a good punter who's, probably a good person.
Right. To the best of our knowledge, not an awful human being.
Yeah. I don't think it's a very high bar to clear the nasty punt man whose name I don't want to say.
But we don't have to say his name, or definitely not his nickname.
Anyway.
But the nastiness of this particular punter in question had already apparently been well known on campus enough that it hadn't already been written, the story in the San Diego Union Tribune, had it?
So some of these stories start getting written, I think either the LA Times or the San Diego Tribune or whatever. I believe the first public news story comes out in May or June. Okay. Which that is when everything's all anonymous.
Right.
But it's apparently sort of an open secret on campus. I'm really...
that was my understanding from reading the story.
Yeah. Really horribly disappointed in the Bills for, I don't think it's guaranteed that they knew anything. I don't think anyone would take a punter knowing this baggage. I really don't. And I say that as someone who's about as cynical as it comes with football teams making horrible decisions.
As an aside, I remember when Brad Wing was a punter at LSU, and he was, I believe, a Ray Guy Award winner or something like that. Which obviously, I mean, you're the one who does the punter analysis, so you know that that's actually not going to be good enough because there's so many, 4-step punters that win Ray Guy Awards in college.
Oh God, yeah.
Again,
the punter we're talking about was one of them, but anyway.
Yeah, right. By the way, yeah. But Brad Wing apparently, from my understanding, was quite a good prospect. Except he would have all these off-field issues. He'd get drunk, allegedly. I'm going to protect myself. Allegedly, he'd get drunk and stuff like that, and had all of these off-field issues. And I remember someone asked me about Brad Wing because the Vikings needed a punter. I believe it was the 2013 draft. Which, man, a good one for the Bills, right? But
Yeah.
but I was like, this is a punter, man. There's no way they're going to deal with all this for a punter.
Yeah, there's no reason to. They moved on about as fast as I think they reasonably could.
Right.
Once
faster than the Giants moved on from that kicker, right? Like that's.
I'm pretty sure the Giants rostered that dude for a while after all that.
Yeah, a while.
But the guy that they signed to replace the nasty punt man, Sam Martin, who I believe that you know from his time in with the Lions, he's barely punted because the Bills don't really do that.
Yeah, they either score or they throw a pick.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it now. Sam Martin has punted 15 times through 8 games.
The Vikings punted 8 times in one game.
Hey,
and
Ryan
it's not
Wright,
a bad offense.
Yeah. Ryan Wright, pretty solid punter. I did not scout him coming out. He was not on my radar. Out of Tulane, I
believe he was a Shrine Game participant. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But Stonehouse definitely was a Shrine Game guy.
Oh, Stonehouse is so good. Man, anyway, he's so good.
Okay, I need to know, actually, the punter I love right now is Jack Fox from the Lions. Do you know anything about? Have you watched any of that? I don't know why you watch Lions football, but he's a punter and you're into that now.
Yeah, Jack Fox is an excellent punter. I haven't like super exhaustively watched the tape, so I don't have any comments on his technique, but like, his numbers are awesome, and I understand why the Lions gave him the contract that
despite always going for the fourth down. Yeah.
Jack Fox,
all right. Well, okay. And before this, the Bills had Corey Bojorquez, who was a phenomenal punter, but.
Yep. Do you know the story for why the Bills did not
because he's an awful holder. I've written about this.
Yeah. Like. Kind of a shockingly bad holder for someone who has been presumably doing this for a long time.
Astoundingly bad.
Kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, awful holder. They let him go because of the holding. I've actually written about that because Cade York right now, who is the kicker for the Browns, is struggling a lot as a kicker, and his holder happens to be Corey Bojorquez.
Mm-hmm.
Bojorquez, after the Bills, they let him go outright, right? They didn't trade him, did they?
Yeah, I think he was a restricted free agent, and they didn't bother.
Right? And so the Rams picked him up, and the Rams already had a good punter. So if he had lost a punting competition, it wouldn't have been because it was Johnny Hekker at the time. So it wouldn't have been like a big deal. But he had a phenomenal preseason as a punter. The Rams openly talked about holding being a really critical part of this, and then he was let go. Which again, Johnny Hekker, who knows? Then he goes to the Packers. Mason Crosby has the second worst year of his 15-year kicking career. And the Packers let him go. And they also explicitly in press conferences talk about holding. So now he's with the Browns and Cade York, a drafted kicker, which it doesn't tell you very much, honestly. But still a drafted kicker is having a really difficult rookie year. And I don't know a ton about holding. I'll say that. I watch a lot of these Cade York misses because I like having narratives confirmed. Not denied. That's very boring. Confirmed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Always.
And I'm not seeing anything that tells me that the holding is off, but there's so many things because a lot of people think holding just has to do with catching the ball, putting it in the right spot, and having the laces out, which is actually not all that important. And it's not, because you also need to make sure not just that the timing is good, but that the contact surface for the kicker is ideal, and sometimes that means angling the ball one way or the other. You can't always tell that from the broadcast footage.
Yeah.
So I wonder if the Cade York thing has to do with that.
I really like Cade York. I think he's like, there is a certain class of like young mutant kickers who are like coming up right now who are just like better at everything than any kicker before 2010 ever was. It's like kind of freakish, actually.
But the same with punters, right?
Cade York,
like with the way we get the Australian rules punting.
Yeah. It is. So Cade York is like one of those dudes. I like firmly believe that. It's kind of hard to tell watching holding like tape. Like it's hard to like diagnose exactly what's going on with holding. A lot of it is that like every kicker likes the ball held differently. Like some kickers like it at a like slightly different angle. Some kickers it is a whole thing. So it is one of those things where I don't think you could watch Corey Bajorka's holding reps and say, well, there's your problem. It's like, it is a cumulative thing, and he was so good as a punter for the Bills in
astounding.
Like he was awesome. He's such a good punter. He just can't freaking hold the ball. It is so frustrating.
It feels
because
like such a small skill.
Like, well, so it is, but also in the modern NFL where punters have to hold. Like, I don't want to boil it down and make it as simplistic as Tony Romo fumbling that field goal in like 2006 playoffs or whatever. Like that wasn't what ended quarterbacks holding, but it kind of was, because the reason he bobbled that hold was because he was the starting quarterback now and he wasn't getting the reps. So like the only person who's going to get the reps necessary in order to have a good relationship with the kicker is always going to be the holder. Mm-hmm. So holding is half of your job as a punter. And a lot of these guys don't hold in college.
Right.
One of my things about the nasty punt man that the Bills drafted was that he didn't hold in college. So yeah, it is a very important, hard to quantify and break down skill set that it's like when you see a team make noise about how a punter isn't a good holder, just go ahead and trust it. Like it is hard to break down.
Right. I'm glad we got our specialist nerd portion of the podcast in, because if I was going to bring you on, there's no way I was going to miss this opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Also, I presume no chance that Xavier Rhodes gets promoted up from the practice squad despite the cornerback injuries, right?
I would say not. I think Xavier Rhodes' window, I would say like the window has been shut. The roads have been closed, if you will. I think the Bills signed him when they still weren't sure what was up with Dane Jackson, because he suffered that really scary looking injury on Monday Night Football. And it turned out that he's pretty much okay. He only missed like 2 weeks. And yeah, they have Trey White coming back. Dane Jackson's healthy. They have Benford and Saran Neal and Cam Lewis. Like they have a lot of dudes there. I'm kind of surprised the Bills haven't released him to give him a shot somewhere else, but who knows?
All right. Well, unless there is something else you want to get off your chest, which sounds like fun. Do you have anything else you want to add?
About the Bills specifically. Like I said, I'm pretty sure that if Case Keenum starts for the Bills, the offense is going to be pretty unwatchable. And I would bet my American dollars, if I was in a state where such a thing was legal, I would bet on the Vikings. In which case, the Vikings would then be 8-1, and I still don't know if they're any good. Which, like, I love that for the Vikings. The Vikings were, I would say, before, and I don't want to talk about the stupid Diggs trade because just everyone is so weird about the Diggs trade
It was
both sides.
Okay,
but
just real quick. It's better for everybody. Diggs has talked about how he's in a better place mentally right now. He apologized for being a bad teammate, which fine. Justin Jefferson's fantastic. If I were to rate them right now, I would say Diggs is a slightly better receiver, but Jefferson is much better value for money, right? That's just the nature of things. That's my take.
Yeah, I think that's very reasonable. And Diggs has shown love to Justin Jefferson online. He's talked a lot about how he's like grown up a lot since he came to Buffalo, and how like Josh Allen is his best friend forever. So anyway, but like before all of that drama, the Vikings were always my favorite team. I would say pretty handily, just because I always liked their jerseys, and in picking a out of conference team, I think that starting with something like, oh hey, their aesthetic is cool, is like pretty good place.
I think that's ideal, honestly.
Yeah. So, and in my life, the Bills and Vikings almost always play weird games. Like if you think about it, in 2010, Arthur Moats ends Brett Favre's
streak,
streak. So Arthur Moats ends that in 2010. And then in 2014, Kyle Orton throws a game-winning touchdown pass to rookie Sammy Watkins, like at the buzzer, to beat, I think that was Teddy Bridgewater's first start. And then in 2018, Josh Allen jumps over Anthony Barr and a wretched Bills team.
That, actually. That doesn't...
Oh, weird.
Bills were 18-point underdogs in that game. 18 and a half.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of weird stuff and those are really the only 3 games in my life that I can remember these two teams playing, but a lot of very strange energy. So I would expect this game to be weird as well, especially with the Case Keenum.
Oh yeah, there's 100% Case Keenum, Stephon Diggs. There's a ton of opportunity for weirdness in this game. Really excited. You basically gave a score prediction because you said that in an imaginary world where you had the ability to bet American dollars, which of course you can't. You would bet on the Vikings, which I guess technically the Bills could win, but it sounds like.
Yeah, I think the Bills defense, assuming that like as long as Matt Milano's healthy, they have a fighting chance on defense. Last week with Poyer and Milano out is like pretty tough to overcome. Assuming they have Milano, even if they don't have Poyer, I think they'll be fine on that side of the ball. It's a matter of the offense, and I would be lying if I very confidently said that I thought Case Keenum could I don't know, score more than 24 points. Who knows? I would assume that they're going to have to change things up pretty dramatically with him, but yeah, I would pick the Vikings outright.
Cool.
To win,
if you have anything you want to plug or where people can find you, let them know.
I'm on Twitter at DirtbagQueer. If Twitter does not exist by the time that this podcast comes up, I'm on Tumblr at DirtbagQueer as well.
Tumblr?
Which is where I'll take my posting. That's where I'm going to take my football posting.
Yeah. From Tumblr to Twitter back to Tumblr.
So, I know. If you need me, I could be there. Also have a football podcast with my good friend Katie. It's called The Tuck Rule. We're on a hiatus right now just because we both got tired of spending a lot of our time recording podcasts every week. But we plan to be back at some point. We plan to be back at some point. And plus we have a pretty good backlog of shows that are not all necessarily weekly update shows. We did some history stuff over the off season.
Who was it that put together the college preview?
Katie normally handles the college preview stuff. We spoke to Stephen Godfrey in that episode, and that was quite fun. We have had some cool guests.
I thought the college stuff was particularly excellent, so I wanted to shout that out. No, Tuck Rule Pod's a ton of fun. I've listened to it, and I highly recommend it when it comes back off of hiatus. Otherwise, follow at DirtbagQueer on Twitter and or Tumblr. Sorry, Tumblr is just always funny to me.
I mean, correct, but also Twitter is way more of an embarrassment.
It is.
And it's
cringe, not close, especially if you've got the I paid for a check mark.
If you got the
Yeah,
verified check,
if you got the receipt stapled to your
want to do
forehead.
it. I kind of want to do it. I kind of want to do it just for a joke.
Okay, well, whatever you want to do, that's up to you. Thanks for coming on the show.
All right, let's go to the mailbag. And the first question's from Ryan, who asks, should we be more worried about a 75% Josh Allen or a Miracle Revenge team-up?
I'm tempting a lot of things by saying this, but I am not concerned about the Miracle Revenge team-up. I don't want to like put myself in that corner, but I mean, Case Keenum's like not like good at quarterback. Like it doesn't. And I feel like the Vikings thing against backup quarterbacks, I think that we're basically done with that, right? Like it used to be, oh my God, it's backup quarterback. The Vikings need to play worse. But that was a previous coaching staff. The Vikings have only beaten backup quarterbacks, it seems like. It's the starters plus Aaron Rodgers that they're having trouble with. But yeah, I don't know. Case Keenum's not that good. The chemistry he has with Diggs is like 5 years old. We'll see if like he still has that. I think 75% of Josh Allen would be kind of terrifying. I don't think it's going to happen based off of the conversation Victoria and I had and kind of just the general feeling that we're getting out of it. But I would be much more worried if Josh Allen were capable of suiting up.
It is weird that this is just the year that we're slaying all of these things. Maybe this is just the year that we reset the narrative on backup quarterbacks. And we just don't have to worry about it as a regular thing anymore because of what happened in 2022. It'd be nice.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
I don't think it's going to happen, but it'd be nice if that was the result.
Be nice.
I don't know if I'd take that over a Super Bowl, but it would be something to not worry about moving forward. What progress should we expect from Hawkinson's game in purple? His second game in purple. Was the playbook limited given the decision to give him only 90% of the snaps?
Yeah. So I think that's an interesting question, right? Because like, how can you justify bringing a new player in and giving him 90% of the snaps and also have the full playbook available to you, right? Like it seems like you're bringing a new player, he doesn't have the playbook, and so you basically decide, well, when he's out there, there's only a limited menu of plays we can run, but he's out there for like 90% of snaps, so that's a pretty decent. But I think that really what's happening is that they were kind of clever about it, and they basically only gave him like 4 or 5 responsibilities total, and all he had to learn was whatever kind of tag or alert was in those plays that isolated what the tight end was going to do so that he would know which one of those responsibilities he had. He probably didn't have to deal with like option routes or anything like that. Remember, like 3 of his 9 receptions, I think, were screens, right? Certainly at least 2 of them, but I think 3 of them were screens. They didn't get very much yardage. Basically, he got his like 70 yards in the other 6 catches. Yeah, I don't think necessarily that like they had a small playbook, but the things that one of their eligible receivers could do was relatively small. I say that knowing that he was definitely a run blocker and was definitely a pass protector. It's like not a bad defensive line. It was kind of weird, but he did all right there. And then he ran a couple of routes. So I'm guessing that like in one sense you could say the playbook was limited, but more that there was a way to make sure that he got a lot of snaps without having to force him to learn basically every option route in the world. So I think that's probably it. In terms of progress, I think it's just going to be stuff that we don't see. It's not like he's going to go from, hey, I got 70 yards, right? And now I'm going to get 90 because I've had a week of practice, and then I'm going to get 110 or whatever, right? Like I think the progress will be kind of subtle, right? Like I think that you probably could not repeat this game plan knowing that one of those players is going to be pretty predictable from play to play because he has a limited menu of options. He has to learn kind of that full playbook. And I think that the way that expresses itself is basically you don't have to rely on the tendencies you established in the previous game. So I don't know that we'll see, continuous strings of 70-yard games or more than that. I think that he's probably going to keep playing at probably a 60-yard game average or something. But I do think that the stuff around what he's going to do is going to look different, and that's going to enable him to keep getting the same amount of yards because you're constantly trying to find ways to avoid getting found out. And so you need to make progress and do new things just to stay at the same level of production. And I think that's kind of what is kind of the driving force here. But I mean, I don't know. He was also like the most productive player out of the trade deadline for traded players. Like, so that, I mean, that was pretty cool. It's like, because after him, it was basically like Jeff Wilson for the Dolphins, and he got like 12 touches. Like, that doesn't count really. So yeah, I mean, he was the most impressive traded asset at the trade deadline. Obviously, like McCaffrey, a couple weeks ago did all right for himself, but Hawkinson, that was pretty cool to see. I don't know if we'll see a ton of that again, but it'd be nice.
Kenneth Allen asks, seems like the best week to ask, who do you think is the better wide receiver, Diggs or Jefferson?
At the moment, I think I said with Victoria, I think I said it's probably Diggs, right? But I think that the margin is extremely small. Diggs right now is playing like the top receiver. Like, I guess Tyreek Hill is probably that guy, but it's like Tyreek Hill and probably Stephon Diggs, and Justin Jefferson's in the top 5 somewhere. So I think it's really marginal. I think right now Diggs is the better receiver. I think, this is what I said to Victoria was that Diggs is the better receiver. Jefferson's the better value for money, right? It's better to have Jefferson on your team, given the situations that they have, that Jefferson is younger, that he's got a smaller contract, and you can kind of work around it. But Diggs is playing extremely high level football. I think that he's probably the better player. And they're relying on him more than the Vikings rely on Jefferson.
Jack asks, was Evans Kami's game a one-off, or does he have a legitimate chance of keeping up with Diggs? Athletically, are Terry and Diggs similar?
So I assume this is about a Caleb Evans, and I thought that he did all right. I think that in terms of like when the camera was on him and the play was headed his way, he did a really great job. But taking a quick look at kind of what he did defensively after he came in, and seeing the plays that he wasn't picked on, I'm not going to say he played poorly. It wasn't like a case where Patrick Peterson against the Packers was constantly giving up all of the space that Rodgers wouldn't throw to. It wasn't like that. But there's some kind of flukes in there that kind of help his overall level of play. As for whether or not Terry McLaurin and Stephon Diggs are similar athletically, I'd say no. Terry McLaurin, if I remember correctly, ran like a 4.3. Stephon Diggs ran a 4.5. Stephon Diggs is much more explosive and quick. He can get open deep. He's a really great deep threat, right? But he's not running 4.3s and getting by you, right? And you get a lot of that with somebody like Terry McLaurin. So I think that the way that you have to defend the two kind of different, just in like they're both going to do like potentially deep balls, but with McLaurin, if he's doing after catch stuff, it's primarily speed, whereas with Diggs doing after catch stuff, it's primarily agility. And the way that you deal with that probably defensively is a little bit different, where your splits, where your linebackers line up if you know a crossing route is coming, how you tackle through like the hip and what you need to keep your eyes on when you're tackling. All those change in a lot of ways. Like I said, Diggs is probably one of the 2 best receivers right now in terms of 2022 gameplay. And so, being able to lock down Terry McLaurin, who might be a better athlete, probably doesn't tell you very much about being able to lock down Diggs. So I'd want to be kind of careful projecting that. Plus, I mean, a Caleb Evans is like a 4th round rookie, right? I mean, there's all the opportunity in the world for him to genuinely be a very good player, but your priors should be that he's probably not going to continue to be, a really high level player. I do not think that he'd be able to keep up with Diggs.
Skull and Fish asks, after each game, the staff says, we got the win, but we still have things to clean up, or something similar. The D-line seems improved. Are you seeing meaningful improvements week to week in other units?
I think that Darisaw is playing, I guess, progressively better football. You've already heard me praise Darisaw a lot, but I mean, he's playing really high-level, phenomenal football, and has for the past 3 weeks. He's been playing well all year for sure, but he's been playing extremely good football the past 3 weeks. So I guess you could say that if we're doing it at a unit level, that has been offset by Ezra Cleveland's last game, and Garrett Bradbury's not playing like the 6th best center in the league anymore. Not that I ever thought that he was, but the PFF grade has cooled down a little bit if I remember correctly. So I wouldn't say that got a little bit better. I guess the running game, though, I guess from the perspective of evaluating the offensive linemen not as pass protectors, but as run blockers, and Dalvin Cook as this ability to generate big play yardage, they're doing a better job. The past couple of weeks, I think we've seen a much more effective and a better running game from the Vikings. So you could say that. Obviously, the defensive line, the question already mentions that. Cornerback, I guess, just because Cameron Dancer has been making fewer mistakes. So when he's healthy to play, that he's a better player than he was last year. And he's better than he was at the beginning of the year. But other than that, I think it's primarily the defensive line. Otherwise, you have to look at individual players, or you can just say something kind of as vague as the running game is. We're seeing tons of breakaway yardage. We're seeing less yards before contact and stuff like that.
Chad asks, what is the over-under on touchdowns scored in the Vikings-Bills game this weekend by people named Cook? Or what about people with 5 letters or less in their name?
All right, so as you heard, James Cook is the younger brother of Dalvin Cook. So we're going to get a high possibility of Cook-type touchdowns. But I was looking through both rosters to see who had last names that were 5 letters or fewer, and the Vikings just do not have very many skilled players in that category, right? It is Dalvin Cook, obviously, and then C.J. Ham, and Johnny Munt, right? Like that's where you are. So you don't get that, but the Bills have a lot, right? Because they have Diggs, right? They have James Cook, right? But they also have another running back, Naeem Hines. They also have a tight end, Dawson Knox. They also have another receiver in Gabe Davis, right? So Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Dawson Knox, James Cook, Naeem. They've got a lot going for them. If I were to set an over/under on the number of touchdowns scored by people with last names 5 letters or fewer, I would go 2.5, right? Because Stephon Diggs is going to occupy so much of that. So we're not going to. It's not huge because the Vikings don't have a ton. They'll lose the 5-letter game, but there's so many from the Bills that I think it kind of overwhelms it.
Let's go to Andrew, who asks, how does the Aaron Rodgers contract play out hypothetically if he retires at the end of the year? Does that contract he signed with Green Bay really put them in a bad spot for a while? Or did they properly mitigate the risk of that happening? Side note, my father and I have an ongoing deal that the moment we learn that Rodgers is no longer a Packer, that you must find the nearest beer and shotgun it immediately. I am not against more people being in on this.
I love it. Please do not immediately drive a car after that. So that is something that Calvin Johnson and the Detroit Lions are fighting about right now. It's not, I guess, easily resolvable. So the difference, of course, is that these have cash flow implications, and less cap implications, right? Like if Aaron Rodgers retires and all his salary cap accelerates into 2022, that doesn't mean the Packers are paying money out of pocket for that salary cap, for that signing bonus, right? He was already paid that. It's just being accounted for this year. So there's a difference. Some teams will have cash flow problems despite having a good salary cap. That was actually a huge problem for the Raiders when Isaiah McKenzie, I think that was his name, cut when he was the general manager, Isaiah McKenzie's like the receiver for the Bills. Whatever. Reggie McKenzie? That must be it. Cut all of those players for the Raiders, and they incurred like hundreds of millions. It was Reggie McKenzie. Hundreds of millions of dollars in cap hit. So they didn't have any cap space. They didn't have any cash. Next year they had a ton of cap space. Still not a ton of cash. And so they had to structure deals in ways that would give the players money later on as opposed to up front, which made it really difficult to get them on signing bonuses. You don't get any of the benefit of the signing bonus proration that way. So those are issues that organizations will fight over. And when Calvin Johnson retired, he had a substantial amount of the signing bonus, and the Lions essentially sued by saying, well, the signing bonus was signed with the understanding that you would perform to the best of your capability the rest of the contract. And he countered with, you can cut me at any time. This doesn't seem like a two-way deal. So I don't know. They're still fighting about that. So the long answer, I guess, is that we don't know. We don't know kind of how that will be played out in Green Bay. I suspect that they don't want to do wrong by their Hall of Fame quarterback that led them to a Super Bowl. But yeah, I don't know. And I think that from a cap perspective, it will accelerate, but that is also something I'm not 100% confident in. All I know is that teams will try to recuperate that money if they think that a player, quote unquote, retired too soon.
Yeah. I don't know. He seems, Roger seems like a pretty stand-up guy. He seems like the sort of person that isn't going to be litigious and is going to just kind of let this one go. He's famous for letting things go.
Famous for letting things go, for sure.
Boy. Also from Andrew, seeing this narrative of one-score games for the Vikings seems disingenuous. Last year, more of the games felt very 50-50. Example, playing in overtime, scoring on the literal final plays, etc. This year, the one-score games are a lot less 50-50 in the last few minutes of play. Example, the Bears' backdoor cover, Saints attempting a 60-yard field goal just to play an OT, Arizona driving for the TD, needing a 2-point conversion. Just to play in OT. Although these games were close, it didn't seem like they were flip of the coin in any way. Is there some merit to this frustration on my part, or am I just hanging out in a Reef's confirmation bias corner?
I would say that there is some element to that. For example, I don't know why you bring up the Saints one, right? So they double doink, right? One of their field goals. I don't think that it was a 3-point game. Yeah, they didn't bring the game into overtime, but like the evidence surrounding close games does not say, hey, when teams go into overtime, this is what happens. It says what happens when teams win a high proportion of their one-score games. That's a one-score game. Like I don't know. That feels like yeah, that makes sense. So I don't know why the Saints is included in this. That seems like a very classic one-score game. It's not as if these come down to the last second, and that's where all the evidence about one-score games comes from. The Vikings, they got lucky that the game didn't go into overtime-ish with a 61-yard field goal. They also had to make their own 47-yard field goal in order to get there with 24 seconds left. That was a pretty close game. I think that counts. And it definitely is the type of game that the data represents when people are talking about one-score games. Bears backdoor cover, I think that's probably fair. In fact, it happened last year, and that was a nominal one-score game, but it kind of didn't matter. But we tend to include it in the statistics, and maybe it's better that we take that out. But basically, then all we're saying is that the Vikings are 5-0 in one-score games and 2-1 in multi-score games, and I don't know that substantially changes things. Arizona driving for a touchdown, needing a 2-point conversion. That's a one-score game. That's a one-score game. That's what counts. The idea that, just to play in overtime, they would need this in order to play in overtime. That is baked in. I don't know. That's part of the data. And so they may not seem like a flip of the coin because one team was leading at the end, but they functionally are, especially the Saints one. I don't know why that one doesn't count. But I get what you're saying, and the team has done a ton. One other thing to remember is that the team is getting these possessions where they're scoring late in order to get ahead or expand a lead or come out from behind with turnovers that some of these turnovers you're like, okay, Harrison Smith is very good at football. He's going to get a couple of turnovers. That's great. We can count on him to do that pretty consistently. I don't know that we can count on Cameron Dantzler having been practicing against the same guy for 5 weeks in training camp, knowing what his weakness is and punching the ball out. That one seems unsustainable to me. I think 3 special teams turnovers in the fourth quarter seems extremely unsustainable to me, especially if one of them was a muffed punt. It wasn't forced by anybody. Those were really critical to the operation of the Vikings. And, if these happen in the first quarter, I'm not talking about them. And so that might, that probably feels unfair. But if with a special teams turnover, if it happens in the first quarter or the fourth quarter, that is generally unsustainable. It just happened to occur at a higher leverage moment. So, yeah, man, all kinds of luck has been involved to helping the Vikings. Maybe a little bit less so with Washington. I understand why, again, that people push back on the Washington stuff, because it seemed like all of the luck broke in Washington's favor And generally speaking, if that game plays out like normal, the Vikings are multi-score leaders. And I get that. I still think a fourth quarter turnover is a big part of the discussion that we're having about this sort of thing. Saying, hey, Taylor Heineke is prone to fourth quarter turnovers, I feel like helps my argument because like the Vikings in a normal schedule would not be playing Taylor Heineke. Like you get why that doesn't inspire confidence in me. Like, oh, they were playing against a bad quarterback that shouldn't have been starting. Wow. As if I had been talking about this, right? The fact that you need one against a Taylor Heineke suggests, it doesn't prove, right? Because again, there's a lot of huge swings in play in this game that had nothing to do with the Viking skill level. Obviously, that the ref bumping into Cam Bynum, sticks out in everybody's mind, but like you should be boat racing this guy. Like that's why this discussion is happening. So a lot of the stuff that you bring up is part of the data. Some of the stuff is just like, hey, we should probably think about these things a little bit more critically. The Vikings have been winning, which is great, but they've been winning against like mediocre versions of teams or mediocre teams and in very close scenarios. And you get more predictive capability when you treat these close games as ties than as wins. And that tells you that the Vikings have largely been playing at the level of a Taylor Heineke Washington team or a Skylar Thompson / Teddy Bridgewater Miami Dolphins team or an Andy Dalton Saints team. They've been playing at that level. That's not inspiring. So they need to play at a higher level. I think the Vikings can do that. I've talked about that a lot. The regression talk is literally just assumes that the Vikings are going to continue the current level of play relative to the rest of the league. If everybody in the league is getting better, the Vikings are getting better at the same rate as them, right? And if that's not the case, if the offense comes together, right, in a way where they're a little bit more consistent and Kevin O'Connell and Kirk Cousins see the field in the same way, that can explode things. But right now, the way the Vikings are playing, these are close games.
Next question's from Tim Rizzo, who asks, if you had to ward off Blue of Earth's dark magic, what item would you carry at all times to ensure your safety? A John Kuhn jersey? A steak made out of frozen ayahuasca? A printed out Wikipedia page outlining how actual science works?
Well, that last one's not going to work on anybody. Wikipedia's been up for a while. People still think the Earth is flat. So,
well, that's because they read it on Wikipedia.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, good point. The steak made of frozen ayahuasca, is that for yourself or for Blue of Earth? This one seems like an important distinction.
Like, right? I'm dying, but at least it's pretty.
Right? Yeah. It's like, okay, I'm dead, but I have seen the folds of the universe appear before me. So half dozen of one, six the other, right? Yeah. It's. But is this? Does this assume that I am Aaron Rodgers? Because I feel like the frozen ayahuasca is like more helpful for Rodgers than it is for most of us, unless I have severely misread the Norse Code audience. Which maybe the more I think about this, maybe I just did.
Maybe this is a situation of like if you had scorned Blue of Earth, if you had done something to upset Blue of Earth, and now you are trying to protect yourself.
Right? Yeah. But like, so like,
not necessarily Aaron Rodgers.
From like you're protecting yourself from like the dark magic, right? But does that mean you're stabbing Blue of Earth with the ayahuasca, or you're stabbing yourself with the ayahuasca?
I think you're stabbing her with it.
Oh, okay. Huh. That feels like that seems like there's a percentage chance that helps her.
Would you have to wear gloves? I don't know if that sort of thing would like seep into your skin if you were like holding on to it.
I think you're fine. I don't think you have to do that.
What?
I mean, okay, so this is not magical advice. We are not
magicians. Are not a gambling website.
Yeah. Any magical or otherwise arcane advice should not be construed as magical advice. We are not magical professionals. Please consult your primary magician when it comes to your magical needs. But you're probably fine holding on to the ayahuasca.
Well, let's delve a little bit deeper into this because this question also
deeper?
came
There's
in.
more?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, there's
jeez.
there's more. Tim
Oh,
Rizzo
no.
also asks, we've heard Arif's deep dives into the theory that Kevin O'Connell could be everything from a warlock to a witch to a
hmm
sorcerer,
hmm
but there is
hmm
one that deserves special attention, a blood elf.
Deserves feels like it's doing a lot of work, but keep going.
A blood elf. Not only
Oh God, you World of Warcraft freaks. Good Lord.
Not only is Kevin O'Connell perpetually wearing a hat to cover his long elfish ears tucked into the sides, no doubt,
What?
but with injuries being the main form of magic he's using on foes, it's natural
Yep.
to assume that he's wielding some form of blood magic.
That feels like a leap. Keep going.
It makes sense given not only the targeted physical injuries of his foes, but transmutation of their life forces through the game balls to to his players. Given Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady's increasingly
No. Let's back up a little bit. The transmutation of the life force through the game balls to his players. What do they? How does this work? The game balls? Do they? I don't. So, but they're handed out after the game.
they are.
So how could that improve your play prior to that? That doesn't work. Like I understand we're dealing with magic, but like time is very difficult to screw around with.
I just like the idea that that's the problem with this. That's what stopped you.
Yeah, I'm drawing the line here.
this is the bridge too far. Given Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady's increasingly frail figures, is it so out of the realm of possibility that Giselle and Blue of Earth are teaming up with O'Connell to steal the life force from their scorned lovers and aid the Vikings?
Oh man, but why would they aid? Well, I guess it's probably some sort of magical brotherhood thing. But they don't have particular affinity to the Vikings, but they might have a particular affinity to Kevin O'Connell. Be he a warlock, a witch, a sorcerer, or I guess a blood elf. Yeah, I just like let's back up a little bit. I deeply regret all of the magical corner stuff. I did not.
That's the theme this year, though.
Find myself. Yeah, I am aware. I accept full responsibility for that fact.
You take it overly seriously for 2 questions, and then all of a sudden, when half the mailbag is about it, you start to regret it.
I just thought when the baby witches were trending on Twitter, I just thought that was funny. Okay, I don't.
Oh, this is absolutely karma for you doing that to me. 100%.
Okay. We can't talk about karma. That feels too related to this.
Come on.
Well, you tell me I'm wrong.
No, I can't, because at this point, everything is in play. People can be blood elves. We don't know.
No. Okay. No. I'm drawing the line at blood elves. There are no blood elves. I'm suspicious of the concept of elves. Blood elves? Too far.
I don't. I suppose. Well, let's do this. Benjamin asks, the stars have aligned for the Vikings in the first half of the season.
Oh, come on. There's more?
Yes. As Minnesota's foremost occultist and neo-regressionist.
What does it even mean?
Does Arif feel that this celestial success is sustainable? Or should fans brace themselves for a regression to the moon? If a regression to the moon is likely, is the mystical link binding the Vikings organization to Randy Moss and his infamously good favor with the moon gained through disgusting on-field acts strong enough for witches?
Very clever.
Strong enough for witches to use that energy in such a way that regression is more of a blessing than a curse.
I can't. Oh God. Oh, that is extremely good. Okay, so the deal with the moon is that you can't disrespect the awesome power that it has over you and the essential role it plays in the distribution of life forces for all non-diurnal beings. You may call them nocturnal beings, but that feels kind of wrong for reasons I won't get into. But non-diurnal beings, right? Beings that draw power during the night from the moon or reflection off the moon during the day. That's the thing with the moon. Obviously, you need to hold people's hands sometimes through this sort of stuff. I know that seemed pretty obvious, but with that, having a particular affinity to the moon, given kind of one of the most important figures in Moon's mythology, Randy Moss, I would imagine that people who take advantage of that affinity are in a better spot. I think that Justin Jefferson wearing Randy Moss's first ever number in a Vikings uniform, and also being the best rookie receiver since Randy Moss, probably kind of carries a lot of that with him. So I do think that there is some level of sustainability with regards to this particular form of celestial intervention. But you do have to worry about baby witches screwing around with the moon. The thing is, the problem with the baby witches and the moon was not that the baby witches successfully cast a hex on the moon. If you remember that episode, which I know many of you do, the issue was that the moon felt disrespected by the hex. The hex did no damage to the moon, but rather the moon felt that this was an abdication of the responsibilities that we all have towards the moon, and that's why everybody's vibes were off. That was the actual quote from the thread. The vibes are off, and that's because the moon was upset, and your moon magics weren't working because the moon needed some sort of restitution of the baby witches. So it wasn't that the baby witches did anything to damage the moon. So I think that with that in mind, I don't think that there is a strong enough witch curse, at least from most contemporary witches, that could in some way take advantage of the Vikings' relationship with the moon to harm the Vikings. So this does push back against my sustainability arguments, I understand, but I think that this was a good point.
Damian Barrett asks, in light of the Colts head coach appointment, what tangentially relevant yet wildly inappropriate job could you be appointed to? Along the same lines of Oscars host for James or White House press secretary for Arif? And would you be more or less successful than Saturday will be in his new job?
I mean, I think you named it, White House press secretary, right? That I first of all, there's a clip of Jeff Saturday going around where he talks about like how he doesn't have any fear. It is an incredible clip. I feel like inspired by it, which is good news, right? But no, I think he's kind of being set up to fail.
Yeah, his players will absolutely run through a wall for him. Unfortunately, there's going to be like all sorts of studs in there, but like they will absolutely run through a wall for him.
Yeah, it's I appreciate a lot of what I saw out of Jeff Saturday in that presser. That looked awesome, but like that's not going to help him when it comes to like a 4 a.m. meeting. Right? It's just like you just have to go to work and you just have to be efficient about watching film until the defensive coach walks in and assumes you know everything they know. Right? Like that's where, you have to figure things out. It's not about, fearing whether or not you're going to be good or bad at the job. That said, I think Jeff Saturday will be a more successful head coach than me as a press secretary. Are you kidding me? I'm barely making it through this podcast. There's no way I could be a press they famously short tenures before we got Anthony Scaramucci. And then it's well known the press secretary is just a job that you just don't hold on to. So I would say that Jeff Saturday has a higher chance of success at his job than me at the White House press secretary job. Oscar host for James. I feel like, you'd probably bomb, but it's probably better than Saturday the coach and Arif the press secretary. Like
they probably wouldn't be throwing things on stage at me, probably.
Yeah, which I think is a pretty good, given the bar I just established for me and Saturday. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think I would survive the broadcast. I'd be roasted on Twitter forever, assuming the Twitter still exists after this recording is posted. But
yeah, and you'd kind of hope that like you're not going to get punched in the face by like Will Smith or any other actor, really.
Yeah, that one would assume that they'd probably beefed up security after that, but again, we don't know.
Yeah, that plus you're like 6'5", right? Because I'm only like what 7 inches taller than you, so you're like 6'5".
Yeah. So
yeah,
being 6'5" means that typically I don't run into that situation very often, but things could happen.
Yeah, it could happen. Yeah.
Let's go into the. I did like the whole sneaking in the you being taller than me thing. I appreciated that. If you want to see just how tall Arif is, check us out at Union 32 Craft House next week, Thursday, November 17th, 7:30 p.m. Kevin asks, my wife's family always has a non-traditional Thanksgiving. This
Fantastic.
year we chose to make ramen and are each bringing an ingredient to go into the pot. What should we bring? Also, we are making I'm not making this up, a charcuterie board.
Why did you spell it like that, Kevin?
That is
I need to know.
That is that's up there in the ways I'm going to start spelling it. A charcuterie board, and each bringing a cheese, meat, etc. For that, what should I bring?
I feel like we got to call PETA about the spelling of this thing. It feels like an animal rights violation.
Possibly.
Okay, so for the charcuterie board, I suggest making your own mustards. That goes like when Chelsea and I did that for one Christmas. That went extremely well. Yeah, other people brought things that were substantial, right? Like, hey, they brought sausage, they brought crackers, they brought cheese. They brought stuff that like you would put the mustard on. But everyone was raving about the mustard, and I think just making your own mustard, which all you need to do is buy whatever kind of liquid that you want to flavor the mustard with. You know, we had 3 different liquids. One of them was a beer, right? You need to buy some kind of vinegar, which can contribute their own flavor, like an apple cider vinegar, for example. Mustard powder and mustard seeds, and you'll grind up the mustard seeds a little bit. And how coarse you want it, that's going to be up to you. But there's a bunch of recipes online for how to do this. It's remarkably easy. And you can make it as spicy as you want. Our spiciest mustard was like wasabi, like genuine wasabi hot. And our mildest mustard was the beer mustard, and it tasted like absolutely delicious. So I think that is something you could do. It doesn't take very long to do, and it's cool. So I'd recommend that for the charcuterie board. As for the ramen, it really depends on the level of effort that you want to put in. I think at the lowest level of effort that I think would taste delicious is to make your own scallion oil. There's a bunch of guides online on how to do that, but scallion oil is phenomenal, and you can just put just a small, I don't know, sprinkle. It's a liquid, right? But a small splash of scallion oil onto the ramen when it's done. Depends on, hopefully other people are bringing like relevant ingredients. At the extreme high end of effort, you could make porchetta and slice that up and bring that in instead of like roast pork. I think porchetta is phenomenal. I did have it in ramen. We made it at Christmas one year, and we did put it in ramen once, despite how crispy the skin is. And that was incredible. Somewhere in the middle, I would say roast pork, right? Like that in the middle in terms of total effort factor. So those are my 3 recommendations there.
Go full MSG. Just bring a package.
Just bring it. Just bring MSG.
Or bring some Narutomaki fish cake, which oddly enough does contain MSG.
Yeah, and they got the little spiral, which is what the Naruto means. I don't want to reference the thing.
But yet here you are.
It does. Nope. It does. It does make the ramen look more like ramen that you'd get at a restaurant. So it's pretty cool.
Let's go to Don from Ohio, who asks, for James and Arif's Twitter blue check corner. I don't have a blue check.
Jesus.
Anyway,
you can solve that problem real quick if you want.
I refuse to use 2.5 people's Patreon subscriptions for a month.
If we get 3 new Patreon subscriptions from this episode, would you consider that?
No. Which I think the silence means I did consider it, but we're going to ignore that. Ignoring semantics, which seems to be what they're doing on Twitter at the moment. Hey, guys.
Quite explicitly.
Yeah. Hey, guys, I'm pretty confused by this whole blue check mark thing.
You're the only one.
Arif has a blue check mark due to, quote, the account is notable in government, news, entertainment, or other designated category. Mm-hmm. In reality, Arif is known for terrible food takes, telling men it's okay to lie to their wives, ungrateful.
That's not what happened.
Being ungrateful to his closest friend when he gave him a bottle of wine.
Don't remember that.
Puts his face on multiple items to scam people out of money.
That's not a scam. You can just buy stuff with my face on it. That's a normal exchange.
And degrading other Vikings podcasters.
That one's true.
And many other transgressions. God, that's the one that cracked me. All right, and many other transgressions which shouldn't allow him to have a blue check mark. This brings us to quote another designated category. What is the designated category that allows a reef to be a verified blue check mark?
I don't understand. Like, it says entertainment right in there, right? Like, it's a notable in government news, entertainment, or another designated. I feel like that qualifies, right? I feel like we all very much enjoyed first of all, the excellent food takes. My food takes are so good. I have won like 90% of the polls across the Football Machine and Minnesota Football Party when it comes to food drafts and various related drafts, like the Halloween candy draft, which, by the way, won in resounding fashion yet again.
Yeah, that one wasn't close.
Yeah. So, I feel like I've done a pretty good job here. I don't want to talk about this lying to the wives thing. That's all you, Don. That's all you.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with something you suggested.
I would never do that, as I made clear when I suggested it.
Well, I'm not going to play the role of your therapist here, Arif, but I feel like we've had a breakthrough of sorts.
So, entertainment. I also do occasionally talk about the news. I don't really break that much news. I do talk about the news. So we'll get another designated case. Okay, first of all, the verified checkmark is not listen to this person. Like, you've encountered way too many blue check marks, even from the before time, where you were not listening to that person, right? Some of them lost a couple of elections a couple of days ago, right? Like, we know that the blue check mark doesn't mean listen to this person. All it means is that this person is who they say they are. That's all it means. That's all it means.
And now, absolute chaos reigns supreme. It is an absolute garbage fire, more so than normal, which leads to Rorschach Cousins asking the following question. I want Twitter to fail because it's the last social media site I'm on, and I'll be a significantly better, and better compensated, employee when it's dead. And I know you said you don't get much traffic from Twitter, but will it dying affect your readership and or listenership?
Yeah, so Stephen Holder tweeted out in response to first he tweeted out some criticism of the way that Twitter has changed. This was a couple of days ago. It feels almost naive to criticize Twitter, but he was very critical of some of the early changes that were announced by Elon Musk and his forced acquisition of Twitter. And I don't know if he implied that he was going to leave, or he just someone thought he sounded ungrateful or whatever. But they were like, "Hey, you rely on Twitter to get traffic to your stuff. I mean, I wouldn't be so cavalier about this. Twitter's really important for you." To which he responded with, "I mean, I see the numbers. You don't. Twitter does not matter." Not matter is maybe a little bit strong, but I see where he's coming from. I think globally across news sources with connected Twitter feeds to both the official publication and for their journalists, I want to say I saw some data that suggested it was 2 to 3% of their traffic came from Twitter. But not every news organization is the same. And a high proportion of my traffic comes from Twitter compared to other people in my category or my field. But the thing is, high proportion means like 16%. Like, I'm at the very high end when it comes to that in terms of conversion. And that doesn't mean it's a good thing, right? Like, it could mean, hey, I've got an unusually engaged audience that click on my work. That's great. It could mean that. Or it could mean I'm really bad at optimizing for search engines, right? Like, that by itself does not tell you very much. But whatever it is, 16% is like the high end you can expect. We were going over a piece I'd written over at Pro Football Network. Actually, I could just tell you what the piece is. They're not gonna mind if I talk about a piece that I wrote, right? But it was the trade winners and losers piece. The traffic for that piece was really excellent, which is great because I was pretty proud of that. And I was like, wow, it was like 14% or something. I don't remember what the percentage was. Came from Twitter. And I was like, that's interesting. And they were like, what do you mean? I was like, that seems pretty high, right? 14%. And we talked about it. I'm like, yeah, because the higher that number is, if I get a ton of traffic on something, the higher that number is, the smaller the percentage has come from Twitter, unless that piece went viral for whatever reason. A hit piece, right, in terms of how good it is, almost certainly is driven by search engine optimization and shares on other socials, and not really on Twitter. So it is a small percentage of my traffic, but it does not mean that Twitter is unimportant to me, as much as I hate that sentence. I don't have this job that I have right now, or the previous job, or the job before that, without Twitter, because it not only provided a platform for me to talk about all of this stuff, right? It's not only the platform that I eventually ended up growing fairly large in, relative to the people that started out in a similar spot as me. It also allowed me to form connections with people in the industry, or people that would end up in the industry, right? Sometimes me and my friends from 2013 draft Twitter will talk about how wild it is, how so many of us ended up with full-time or part-time jobs in the industry from just talking about the draft in 2013, which all occurred on Twitter, right? That gave us enormous connections, that, basically each other, right? That allowed us to help each other when we needed to help each other, and it allowed us to share ideas and bounce things off of each other, and made us better, right? So that includes people like Charles McDonald, includes Justice Mosqueda, includes Derek Clausen. Derek Clausen's writing a weekly column at the New York Times. Charles McDonald is making insane amounts of money, I assume, over at Yahoo Sports. Justice Mosqueda is a guy. So
he's making enough to be an NFL owner now.
He's an NFL owner. I mean, he is ascended, and is responsible for the failures of the organization that he owns. But yeah, I mean, like, we've all done and that doesn't happen without Twitter. Mike Kay, for example, the guy who held my job at Pro Football Network, now has a fantastic job over the Charlotte Observer, right? Like, these are things that only occur because of Twitter. And those networking opportunities in the future would remain important to me in a world where Twitter remains relevant. So it dying, which I think is well within the cards. I mean, I'm retweeting a bunch of jokes, and I don't think that it's as certain as me retweeting it seems to indicate, but I think that's a very strong possibility. And there's a couple of reasons I think it's a strong possibility. First, you could just take a look at it externally. There's a bunch of advertisers that are fleeing Twitter. If you take a look, remember, Elon Musk was forced to buy, sorry, it's very funny to me that he was forced into it, was forced to buy Twitter for $44 billion, right? His primary method of injecting new revenue into Twitter was to have people pay for verification. Now, this has been a disaster. I'm not going to go over it. If you want to pay attention to it, you already know. If you don't want to pay attention to it, no reason to listen to this part. But was to get people to pay for verification of some sort through the kind of somewhat subscription service that they have, the monthly Twitter Blue thing, which I mostly use because it allows me to post 10-minute videos instead of 2-minute, 20-second videos. And it gives me a curated news feed that's actually really convenient. It gets me past advertising on some articles. It's useful in ways that have nothing to do with the NFT thing that they had for a while. I guess still technically they have, or verification. But a bunch of advertisers, for whatever reason, right, don't like what the platform is doing. Either, right, because it seems like there's instability with leadership decision-making, or because brands are not being protected on Twitter, or other people are leaving Twitter, so the advertising dollars mean less, or they don't want to be associated with a platform that's going to have continued harassment or hate speech, or whatever problems that come with a lack of moderation that seems to be an issue that advertisers want to run into. They're fleeing. And that was a bigger source of revenue than the Twitter verification revenue could possibly bring in. Think about how many people are verified on Twitter. Probably 300 to 400,000 people based off of the numbers that I saw. If all of them pay $8 a month, right? Just think about that, right? So it's 8 times 12. So that's yearly. It's $96 a month times, let's say, 350,000 people, assuming that everybody who's currently verified pays, right? That is $33.6 million a year. That sounds like a lot, but you have to remember, Elon Musk bought for $44 billion, which means it is 0.7% of the purchase price yearly. The advertisers matter way more. That and you know, of course, he opened it up to new people, but that wasn't the initial plan, right? So there's that. He had to sell off Tesla to cover the costs of buying Twitter, because he secured basically with Tesla stock, and investors already knew that he was doing that, so they short sold the stock before he had the ability to sell, because they knew that they would be flooded with supply basically of Tesla stock and not enough buyers. So he had to do that. He demonstrates extremely capricious leadership. He has made a bunch of decisions, announced them on Twitter, and then taken back within hours sometimes. I don't know if anybody was awake long enough to see the official tag underneath some accounts. That was up for in hours. Some accounts were given the official tag to distinguish the types of verification that existed. That went away.
And is now back tonight.
Wait, hold on. What?
It's back tonight.
So there's two Okay, hold on.
Yes, I can say this quite officially. Yeah, it came back tonight.
Oh, okay. Let's find out. So if I look at somebody I know is officially verified, Hassan Piker, a streamer, I don't see it.
Earlier tonight on mobile.
Just on mobile? Why not on web?
I just assume you're breaking stuff.
Yeah, of course. Because he was verified as and this is distinct from when you click on the little button.
Yes,
that's a different thing. Okay. So I'm clicking him because it was like very funny in some circles that he was verified, and I think literally no other streamer was. I don't see it on mobile. Maybe it's only on Apple.
I had it on here earlier because people had mentioned that it was weird that it had come back.
It might have just been like a programming glitch or something like that, because they had announced that it was gone. Either way, like extremely glitchy, right? So they replaced that with, when you click on the little check mark, you see whether or not it's verified because it's notable in government, news, entertainment, or another designated category, or because we paid for it. Either way, this has led to a series of disasters for companies, which will, I don't know, I'll link in the show notes, but companies making statements that are contrary to their goals, or public the Chiquita Banana account.
The Chiquita Banana one is the one that jumps out at me.
Yeah.
Between that and Nintendo.
Yeah. So Nintendo tweeted out, a fake Nintendo account that was verified tweeted out a picture of Mario giving whoever's watching it the finger, which led to a bunch of great interactions. Like, Mario would never do that, and a response from the quote unquote official Nintendo account, well, he just did. Like just good interactions, right? Or Chiquita Banana essentially acknowledging that they fomented a coup in Central America in the early 1950s, right? Like, just, stuff that they wouldn't do. That sounds like a disaster if you own Chiquita Banana or Nintendo and want to advertise on the platform. Like, oh, you're not even going to protect our brand presence? Okay, well, never mind. So that happened. He told executives in a meeting that he does not know what the burn rate is at Twitter, and that the website might go bankrupt. He told executives that they might go bankrupt, right? Multiple news organizations have asked their employees to no longer promote their Twitter when talking about themselves on air or in print, and not link people to their own Twitter account. Don't delete your account, because if Twitter continues to exist, somebody might impersonate you if you delete your account. But basically said, hey, we don't know the future of this platform. You don't need to promote it anymore, right? And then on top of all of that, on top of everything I just said, all of the compliance officers at the highest level either resigned or were fired, and they decided to go to what was it called, voluntary regulation, for meeting FTC rules.
That seems nice and legal. By the way, I sent you something.
Cool. That is not going to work, and then also on top of that, triggered an FTC investigation, the Federal Trade Commission. okay, so you sent me a screenshot where, okay, I don't know, maybe if they're promoted.
Maybe. I
That's
have no
how.
idea, but the official thing is coming, or is posting a couple of times, so.
That's okay. I'm just going to go to that account on my phone because this is wild that this would do this. Um, oh, okay. So they just removed it from Hassan Piker. Okay, that's also funny. Okay, yeah, I see the ad. I see the official. So you get the check mark and you get the official underneath their thing. Can I click on it and see? No, it doesn't. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So all of that's happening. Plus, they just triggered an FTC investigation. Um, I suspect that Musk might have allowed the thing about bankruptcy to leak because it stops people who finance the debt for Musk to buy Twitter from selling the debt as a toxic asset. If he declares bankruptcy, they have to hold on to it, I think. I am not a financial expert, just as much as I am not a magician or a legal expert or a medical expert. But that is my understanding. So I don't know. We're like dying here, and Frank, I have no idea what to do. That's the only reason I wanted to answer this question is because I don't know what to do. I'm not moving to Mastodon. That looks like it sucks.
We're actually just going to move the website. We're just going to move all Norse Code social media stuff over to Truth Social. So
that makes sense. Certainly that aligns with our brand value.
Yeah, that's just where we're going.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate because I feel like we've helped build, or I feel like I've helped build, I think you've done too, but build up the show on Twitter. Facebook, there's not as much interaction and everything, but Twitter has been fun to interact with all of you crazy people on. So
yeah, Twitter has been so big for us. It makes no sense for us to go to TikTok. It doesn't make sense to go to I don't know, Snapchat's dead, right? To go to Snapchat, Facebook, that please. What other, there's no social, like Instagram. That's come on, James and I.
My favorite thing about the Facebook thing though is that when Dusty originally got the Facebook thing put in, he didn't put in Norse Code as the name of the URL. He put in the Daily Norseman. So when the Daily Norseman went to go get a Facebook thing, they had to go with something else.
Oh my gosh.
And I literally went and tried to change it one day and I couldn't. And I went, oh, well, I tried. It was shortly after I got control of the account and just went, oh, well, that's unfortunate. That's
extremely funny.
Let's put an end on this. Let's go to my favorite question of the week, possibly of the month. Vikings burner account is asking the following question. You have 11 Tom Brady's and 11 actual goats.
I'm following.
You need to deploy the Brady's to eat all of the grass on an overgrown half-acre property in 48 hours. While the goats have to successfully get a touchdown from the 50 against the Lions defense, who's more likely to accomplish their job? If we were ever going to use leaps of logic, this is going to be the one.
It depends on how motivated the Lions players are. By that I mean, if you're 310 pounds and run a 4.740, you could do a lot of damage to a goat, right? I
What websites are you watching where you know this?
Well, it's just, have you seen goats? They're not big. Right.
I do know that they'll move out of the way.
Sure. I'm just saying if you tackle a goat, you're probably breaking its ribs. That's all I'm saying. Right. And if you're on Wuzarike, right? Or if you're Aiden Hutchinson and you're closing in on that goat, you hesitate, right? I don't want to hurt an animal, right? That's got to, so that's my question, right? It's how committed are the players and the Lions to literally animal abuse?
Meanwhile,
if they're normal humans, we're not getting to the Brady stuff yet. If they're normal humans, those goats are definitely scoring that touchdown, easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if they're the Lions that are we can't let these goats. Our families are on the line, man. We can't let these goats score. I don't think the goats score. They're agile. right? They can jump for sure. But, I mean, assuming they know their job, right, which is to bring a ball into the end zone. Let's assume that much. I don't know, man.
I think the screams of the goats would end up being too distracting. I think that would be one of the ways they'd be able to,
especially if they're like the goats that scream like humans.
Yes.
Oh,
it's like the Taylor Swift, like the Taylor Swift video.
Yes, exactly. The first thing that came up in my head. Yeah, yes, the Taylor Swift video.
Meanwhile, you have the Bradys out there, and I wonder.
Okay, this feels lopsided. Brady basically eats grass anyway.
I was gonna ask if chlorophyll is a part of the TB12 diet.
He's putting. You know how a lot of people have like they go to like Jamba or whatever their local equivalent is, and you've got these shots that you can put into your smoothies, and one of the shots is like wheatgrass. Brady's just putting grass in. He's like, yeah, screw me up, put some grass in.
He's become Edward Norton's character in Death to Smoochie. It's just like,
exactly.
Nope, you just put a little bit of wheatgrass in here and pow. Off to another planet.
Yeah, so I think the 11 Bradys could consume a half acre of grass in 48 hours. I want to be clear, that much grass is poisonous. The Bradys will die. But that is not an important element to this question, right? The only reason I care about the goats' welfare is because it affects their success rate, right? So assuming that our only goal here is to make sure that we accomplish either this mown half-acre property or a touchdown, right? Assuming we don't care about the welfare of the goats, the Lions, or the Bradys. I'm going to go with the Bradys, who will develop some pretty significant digestion issues, which will probably kill them.
Yeah, that's kind of where all this was leading anyway.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. We will be back next week to review the Bills game, and we'll be back next week to have our live show over at the Union 32 Craft House on November 17th at 7:30 p.m.
I just imagined having the entire episode we just had live. God, geez.
Yep.
Oh,
I've heard there's potential Luke masks that could be brought out for the show, so that
I want to be clear, not an idea I had, nor an effort that I'm participating. I just want that to be clear.
Yes,
someone else, in theory, if this were to happen, someone else came up with and then also offered to do this. So this is, I am clear of this. I would never deceive law enforcement through Luke Braun masks or any kind of important official anything.
If you have a blue check mark, I would never wear a mask of your face to commit a crime.
Right. Yeah. I for Halloween I did wear it on a podcast. That's I will
nightmare fuel. Absolute nightmare fuel.
A phenomenal moment in a Reef podcast history.
Yes. But that's gonna be it for this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Reef, what do you have to plug?
Head over to ProFootballNetwork.com. Obviously, you can see the trade winners and losers piece. That one is a bit old now. I did write about the division a little bit. I wrote about how I thought actually Justin Fields is playing pretty well over the past 3 weeks. He's a substantially different quarterback than he was for the first couple of weeks. I also, of course, wrote a Vikings piece. Minnesota Vikings have a season-defining 4-game stretch starting with the Bills. Seems self-explanatory, but I did talk a little bit about kind of what that looks like and what you can learn from the Vikings, even if, for example, Josh Allen doesn't play. And then we talked a little bit about Jeff Saturday in the episode. I also wrote a piece about that where I was very critical of the Colts. So head over to ProFootballNetwork.com, find those articles. You can head over to ProFootballNetwork.com/author/ahassan to find the articles I wrote. I'll be linking them in the show notes as well.
All right, so that's me it for this episode. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. We'll be back next week. So for Reef, my name is James. Thank you guys so much. And please remember that blood elves are not a thing. And we'll be back next week. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan of Pro Football Network, and he can be found at Arif Hassan NFL. I am your producer and host, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN or my personal account at Big Mono. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can do so in a few different ways. You can go to patreon.com/NorseCode and donate there. For $3.50 a month, you get bonus material and more. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode for a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and pick up some Norse Code merchandise. Any questions or comments that cannot fit in a tweet can be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this.
All things are possible through the power of Ben DiNucci.